I would love to see Kelazhur try something, maybe a proxy or something that he doesn't do too often. And one thing that should be mentioned is that for the first time in I don't know how many finals or semifinals, we don't have Cham against Kelazhur. So that's pretty high.
There you go. Variety is the spice of life. And here we are living it out loud, ladies and gentlemen. In the bottom left of Oxide, we have the red Terran player. He is Kelazhur. Rocking that beautiful Team Liquid Horse.
Hells yeah. But there's somewhere a question about ducks and horses and sizes, and this one is representing the ducks. For Crankly Ducklings, it is Erik. Who would you rather fight? The horse or the duck? How many ducks?
I actually went down a rabbit hole on this recently, so I'm gonna spare everybody that one and just quickly say there's few things that terrify me more if you made it horse sized than like a small dog, because they don't know how to control themselves. They're always trying to climb on everything, and even if it's not threatening, I feel like it would accidentally eat you, because they would try to be playful. Whereas if it was a normal combatant, you'd be a little bit more on edge, right? Yeah. I really don't want to. No. Okay, just keep going.
I think it's your golden retriever. I mean, golden retrievers are extremely affectionate. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That's probably what it comes down to.
You guys are casting the last match, and he just comes up and boops me in the face, and I'm like, okay, now I've got to get the. I'm like he's just trying to break my nose randomly because he can't not throw himself. I'm like, that's the scariest if they're like the horse sized things. No.
Yeah. But I mean, golden retrievers just have such a big heart. I think as far as dogs are concerned, they're some of the most.
Problem is he would pick me up, right? But he's got giant, massive teeth if he's a horse-sized dog, and probably wouldn't.
Right.
He probably wouldn't realize what he's doing to me. Is the problem?
That would be terrible. Yeah. Alrighty, Erik trying to take a third. He's gonna sneak out with a different drone onto the triangle third instead. So forced to take that one. And this was actually the map where he went burrow roaches, by the way, last time around against Kelazhur.
Nice. Well, we were talking about that, right? That's not a strategy that we see super often. I guess that's a decent one enough if we see something like that. It's always hard, right? Because if the depots are lowered, or I don't know a whole lot of Terrans that don't at least put a turret somewhere at the front of their base, right? You kind of have in your mind, based on the state of the game, whether mutalisks or something like that will be an option, and it's always worth it to just build a few eventually. You don't have to build a lot, but at least one or two, just so that you don't get blindsided. They're not that expensive.
Yeah, and if you're Kelazhur, I mean, this is the one map that you dropped last time, and so you would probably be looking for that of all things more avidly than you normally would. So for sure, gonna be difficult to pull off that from Erik, but Erik is well versed in many different styles, and that is one thing that makes watching him very exciting, is that he does play a lot of different styles. Can he match up with any of those styles with Kelazhur? That's a different question altogether.
Yeah, and that's going to be the hardest thing, is because eventually Terran versus Zerg does pretty much always turn into a mechanical battle. Yeah. It's very rarely a matchup that can be decided by coin flip builds or all-ins, and that's honestly one of the reasons why people love watching TVZ as much as they do, is because at some point somebody always has to kind of make a cool play. There's not, there's no interaction that's a super one-sided or binary unless you're going like the ultimate greedy build and you're not scouting and you just have 10 Hellions versus like 20 roaches. Then you at that point you've screwed up. But that's that in and of itself could be the big thing, right? It's just your ignorance of what's happening.
Yeah, even like hellbat attacks and stuff like that. Like even if you're completely unprepared, because in CVT of all matchups, queens are so very useful and have so much utility that you just normally make a bunch, and it's very difficult to die with queens. And then Zerg just doesn't want to apply pressure because you don't have creep when you're applying pressure, so you're at a disadvantage, and you have to contend with defender's advantage on the side of the Terran. So if you want to utilize your resources well as a Zerg, then you have to rely on the creep, and that's why we see those links and those queens very much on creep all the time, except for now.
Yeah, good creep tomb replacement though. The way he was tucking those first few ones in, the connection between the bases went up nice and decently. But I feel like a common thread of like these sort of safety roach feelings. Okay, well, he's just gonna march the queens across. I guess those overlords are where the rest of the roaches are supposed to be coming in from. So 6 overlords being made at once. I think he meant to have a little more with this, but this actually gives a pretty huge heads up to Kelazhur who does have a wall, but he can't turn any of these into Ravagers without the supply. So now it's available, but this is just going to get really awkward because I think that bunker should be able to finish, and it should be very hard to actually break this on the part of Erik.
I mean, there's no cloak, is there? Like, if there was cloak, this would be an easy hold because this Banshee would just be killing everything. But because there isn't cloak out, these queens are actually lethal. And for everything that we were saying, I mean, Erik might make us liars here because his attack is looking extremely strong and extremely surprising to a Kelazhur that just didn't get cloak and has otherwise a lot of Hellions, which are not going to help against roaches. He started 1-1, which seems like a little bit of hubris almost. Like really, like.
I mean, given the production, I don't know if he doesn't really have a whole lot more else he could be doing. I definitely think that if there's one justification for it, it's that if the wall were to be broken immediately, then he probably would die. But now the bunker is still up. He still has the wall, so the Lings can't run through. As long as he keeps the wall together and those Zerglings don't run in and surround everything, then yeah, the siege tank is going to finish, and he's going to eventually be able to push this off. I don't think you have a whole lot of plan B options if you're in Erik's spot here, though.
Yeah, you really don't. And yeah, for everything that we were saying now, like the exact opposite, he's even salvaging the bunkers. I mean, like that is just completely unnecessary. I mean, he starts 1-1 and salvages the bunkers. That's just an unnecessary flex, because you know all you have to do is hold, and he's held with honors and flying colors in spite of him not really scouting the attack, and in spite of not getting the cloak for the Banshee, and in spite of getting those upgrades, and in spite of salvaging the bunkers. And I mean, it's going to be extremely difficult for Erik to pull it back now.
So here's the thing. Not only did he keep the wall up and get enough army to push that army away when he needed to, but because he did it with the engineering bays, he's going to get that 1-1. And that's a huge advantage to have if he moves across the map, which it looks like he wants to do. So he's going to have that 1-1 lead over these units, and that's going to be a huge amount of extra damage, especially against the Zerglings, because once those get cleared up, I'm sure the bio, you're not worried about just a handful of Ravagers. As long as you can't get held in place and hit with the corrosive bile, you're always going to be in a good spot. Ling backstab, though. Erik's going to come in for the tanks from behind. This means the Marines just kind of have to fight the Roach Ravager on their own. Biles do hit the medevac and the Banshee. The Queen's able to finish that Banshee off, and actually really nice grab here by Erik. I think Kelazhur might not have been actually ready to start that fight yet, although he did want to cross the map. And Erik's going to buy himself a good bit more time. That lair is done. He's going to build 7 more roaches. He's getting roach speed. I thought I saw evolution chambers. Yeah, okay, so there's the 1-1 beginning for him. So he's going to try to play this out. Is this roach ravager? Do you think he tries to squeeze in like a Hydra den at some point?
Maybe. I mean, I don't think it matters too much. I think that Kelazhur, that was a huge overstep and a huge mistake to move out at all. Yeah, he had the 1-1 timing coming, but I think that he only moved out with 2 medevacs, so he was always going to lose a chunk of his army. He knew that there was a lot of forces left over for Erik, so he really has no business being out on the map. Now, this is perfect because you can load all of those units back into the medevacs, right? Like, this is perfect because this is just keeping your opponent honest, basically saying if you didn't or if you don't have enough units, then you know you have to make them or I will do damage. That's perfect. But the greater move out earlier, that seemed completely unnecessary to me. Regardless of that, he's miles ahead, so it's not gonna matter too much. But if he starts losing this medevacs, that could become problematic.
He's trying to force it. He's trying to force it really hard here, dodging the biles. If these 2 medevacs had gotten grabbed by those biles, I think we'd start singing a different tune really quickly, because he's still building up the roach count in a big way. He's not investing a tremendous amount past this point into the economy, and that 1-1 for the Roach Ravager will be finished soon. He's starting to add Zerglings again to this, so is Erik going to just go for another big assault? If Kelazhur keeps extending himself like this and losing units out on the map, then I don't know. This game starts to feel wide open.
Yeah, but the problem is the upgrades, and Kelazhur already got his armory. As long as he continues to have that upgrade lead, he's going to get to 3-3 much faster. He could hit a 2-2 timing as well. He has actually 2 medevacs, or 2 sets of 2 medevacs on either front, so he's going to be able to assault both of these bases at once as he moves here at the north as well as the south bases. So this is a nice move from Kelazhur. He wants to pick off those queens if possible so that the medevacs can retreat. And on the other side, it looks like he's getting the hat trick.
Oh, yeah, it's a huge pickoff. Got both bases at the same time. And that's, I guess, when we talk about this kind of stage of the game, when it's just Roach Ravager, you don't have mutas, you don't have corruptors or anything that can try to get those medevacs out of the sky. They just become increasingly annoying as more time goes by. Erik pushing onto the third. We do have a couple of tanks staggered. They're a little bit back towards the natural more, so some of the SCVs are exposed, but the Marines are able to handle a lot of this and gets that third base that you were talking about earlier. Hatch is down. Marines are going to stim forward and chase down Erik's forces, and there's not a whole lot more he can do here. He's got 13 roaches being made, but Kelazhur's building 3 tanks at a time.
Yeah, no, I mean, this cleanup should be it. Yeah, there's roaches in production, but I think Erik should start to realize that this one's done. And maybe because it is the first game of the series, he has a little bit more stamina to spare. But I would save my energy. I mean, this is not a game that, as Kelazhur, you probably just attack move pretty confidently here. There's not... I'm actually just going to stare at the cameras and see if he's... actually, he looks laser focused.
I like Kelazhur's camera.
Yeah.
POV, you're a Terran's F2 key. There you go.
Yeah. Can we actually get a POV of Kelazhur? Since, I mean, there's really not that much more to say about this game. I think that this game is just going to be a little bit of a massacre from here on out.
He gives him enough time to land like 4 fungals in the dead center of the army and then land 7 corrosive biles perfectly spit across all of it. He might be able to get something done. But yeah, no, I feel like this next attack should be able to put a bit of a button on this one.
Thank you for that, Neil. And here's the final fight, potentially. Or, I mean, the final fight is whenever Erik decides it's the final fight, but he's not winning this game, that's for sure. As Kelazhur pushes further onto creep with a slow siege, he's being methodical about it. He's not going to drop the ball here.
And he's going to continue to move forward, getting the tanks spread out, as you can see, moving the ones in the back.
Oh!
So there's that fungal. It did get across all of the bio.
All of it.
Still about 8
matter.
siege tanks. Yeah, I was going to say, there's still about 8 siege tanks on top of that ramp. So do it again, okay.
Oh!
He gets all the medevacs.
I mean, that was the best
tanks there. That
was the best
tricky
possible combos, right? Like, he actually got the medevacs, like Kelazhur clumped them up for him, but it still doesn't matter. I mean, that was
pretty funny the way that happened. He did get the fungal on all the bio and medevacs, and he did land the bios perfectly across all of it. But 8 siege tanks on the high ground, pretty good unit to have when that was pretty much everything else that Erik had. So a 1-0 lead here for Kelazhur. Got to be feeling good, and maybe a little bit cautious about some of those move outs, right? Because he kind of gave up a little bit of his edge early on. Usually when an attack like that from the Zerg on like kind of like a 2.5 base as far as number of drones go, if a push like that doesn't work, usually the Terran just straight up wins, right? So it's very hard in that position. The Zergs don't have a lot of easy ways to segue out of early aggression.
Yes, indeed. So I mean, that was a pretty dominant game from the side of Kelazhur. I don't know what Erik's gonna do. I mean, roaches is something that we've seen him try before in the previous series, but he really didn't lean heavily on that style in games to follow. You know, he went back for the lurkers, back for the mutilating bane. So this is one of the bigger maps. I imagine we're gonna see something to that extent. Maybe Link Bane opening into either Muta or lurkers.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it feels really tough because at the same time, I'm still like, Kelazhur is still a player that I expect to play really well in those longer games too anyway. So I'm like, if you can't cheese him, then I don't know, maybe you dial it back towards something more greedy and hope that he attacks you and you can defend it. You can bait him into a false sense of security. It's very, very tricky especially when a Terran player gets momentum in a series like this, because Kelazhur's got to be feeling good after that one. He held a huge attack. He held a huge push. And yeah, I'm watching as the delay kicks in on that last fight again. Just some gnarly biles and fungals. But if that can't be enough, then you have to start to ask yourself what can be.
Yes, indeed. I'm just reading chat here because someone was saying that I am using the English language wrong. And I shouldn't be saying in spite, but despite. So I Googled it. And to you, my friend, Mr. Primo Bola something, Google says despite and in spite of what you may have heard, work identically in a sentence. In other words, these two prepositions, in spite of what you may have heard, are basically identical. So, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not a first language English, but you had me doubting myself there for a second. I appreciate it because I do like to learn, but yeah, it's you who's wrong. So just saying.
Got him. We're loaded in to 2,000 atmospheres. In the northeast, we have the Red Terran player leading 1-0, representing Team Liquid. He is Kelazhur.
And in the bottom left-hand side, in spite of that game, will he be able to come back from Cranky Ducklings? It is Erik.
Just makes me think of like if you made a clan like Angry Puppies or something, you know. It's like why are you trying to make something cute seem like it's angry or evil, you know? I don't know.
Ducklings, yeah.
Did the ducklings not get their coffee in the morning? You know, these are the things that I start to think in my mind. I'm like, oh,
I mean they very much do, right? If you look at the eyes of that duck, he's wide awake.
Yeah, well, so there you go. Coffee. It's not that, right?
Can you get cranky from too much coffee?
I guess. I don't know. Well, actually, I've had I've overcome some pretty serious caffeine addictions over the year. I'm a 1 cup a day kind of guy now, Cats. But I actually can confirm that too much coffee, you definitely can get tilted more easily. So that could be it. There you go. Ooh, okay, the proxy
look at this.
hatch.
It's spicy. I like it. It's the 3rd hatchery. It's after a pool. So I think we're gonna see Ravagers almost for sure from here. But actually, if we were to see Ravagers, we might have already seen the 2nd gas being taken. So I'm a little bit confused here. It looks like it's most likely going to be speed, but I'm not sure then what this hatchery would be for. Maybe he wants to spread creep from that hatchery, make a queen and spread creep so that you deny the low ground CC and then you create some sort of contain.
Yeah, if he builds the lings directly, oh no, that hatchery is still not going to be done for a while, right? So you can't, I'm not sure that there's an easy way to try and delay the command center. So if you can force a liftoff later, maybe. I think that the way he did this with the hatchery and the natural, it's the fake, right? You're trying to sell that you're just doing a normal, boring build and nothing crazy or weird is happening. And the Roach Warren starts up now. So from Kelazhur's perspective, if you don't realize that this is happening and you don't have anything situated like a bunker or whatnot, and then the creep tumors start spreading in front of your base, but you're also not sitting on a ton of scans early on either. You kind of need those meals to build your economy.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely important for Kelazhur to keep a healthy balance there as far as the economy is concerned. There are going to be Hellions, which is not going to help him much against those Roaches, as we now know it's a Roach Warren. So it looks like it's just going to be a kind of a classic all-in here, with the Roaches being produced from the closer hatchery, since, you know, therefore there's not going to be any travel time. Something that sort of has done in the past in CVC, not something that you see very often in CVT, especially because you usually would, you know, bank up a little bit more gas and go for Ravagers and the likes. So it's just going to be Roaches. Maybe one Ravager can be created here on the side of Erik, but here he comes.
And Kelazhur, has he really gotten a whiff of this at all? No, Roach is just going to waltz into that natural. We've got 2 fresh, well, one mostly fresh mule dead and one that's got a little bit less time, forced to go back over towards the main. So a lot of lost mining time off of those very valuable units. Some SCVs get trapped here because he does not want to let the Roaches walk into the main base. And this is where it gets really scary, Cats, because I didn't want to say it earlier because it sounds silly if it never happens. But if he forces like a lift on the command center, able to continue to spread that creep in the Terran's natural, that is an incredibly hard position to play from. You're trying to build units that can fight. You don't want to build a Raven early here. That's not going to give you what you need against this type of attack. But at the same time, now you're not going to be able to do anything until you can clear out all this creep that's about to be in your natural.
Yeah, and this is the contain that I was referencing at the start of the game. Only Erik did it with Roaches as well, so it's a little bit stronger, a little bit more of a committal as well. Erik is now pulling ahead in workers. I would love to see him take a 3rd now. And yeah, I mean, you were talking about, Nate, what does Erik need to do? Like, what would be something cool that a Zerg can do? Well, I didn't see him do this against Kelazhur before at all, and it's worked wonders so far. So it looks beautiful.
Yeah, that's it. It's such an annoying thing to have to deal with as a Terran player. Like, these things are just, sometimes you just leave the command center on the ground and let the creep kind of spread around it and be like, I'm going to save it at the last second. And then, you know, you don't, and you feel even worse about it. But the Viking is going to come out. I look for overlords on the map, I guess. The Banshee does. The Queen's not there. It's not like he built a drone and added a spore here. So the Banshee's actually got some pretty decent value. And getting the Ravager there is really nice too.
Yeah, but the Banshee once again without cloak. So this might actually be something that Erik is accounting for. Maybe that Kelazhur doesn't usually or often build cloak. Because, I mean, as far as his plans are concerned, they deal with Banshees pretty well, and Kelazhur has opened Banshee twice in a row, but twice in a row, the Banshee part of the attack, or the defense in this case, has been shut down by those Queens.
Yeah, and this, so the Vikings gonna get the Overlord there? Wow, okay, that Banshee got very low. Please, I need to see the repair. You're almost there. It's so close, but... And there's a second scan, so this is what we're talking about as well. It's not free to just do this because you're denying yourself that future opportunity to get the mineral income from the mules, but at the very least, you clean it up. Queen goes down. And yes, I have been very anxious. I don't know if I seem distracted right now, Cats. It's because I'm very anxious about that 1 hit point or whatever Banshee that's just sitting there. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm very big on repairing things that get damaged. Yeah. It's real bad for my anxiety to see those low health bars, Cats.
There it is. But look at how many scans it's going to cost Kelazhur just to get out of his base. Lucky for him, he did go for a 3rd command center, which is going to help a little bit. But this creep has been extremely annoying for him to deal with. He still has the hatchery to clear, and it's not going to be anytime soon that he's able to land that 3rd. In the back of this, Erik, who I thought could have maybe massed a few more units and gone across the map a little bit earlier with them to fortify that contain, has at least established himself an economic lead, but it's not as big as I'd like it to be. Like, what were these links made for? Because they didn't do anything.
No, not really anything at all, huh? And some of them, I guess he's gonna pull a few of these guys away as it finishes. Loses the Hellion. I think the Marines could have cleaned those up pretty easily, but that's okay. He might have been worried about like getting flanked, I guess, if there were more units coming over towards him. But he's going into bio and he's building 3 Marines at a time, Cats. His 1-1 is a little bit behind Erik's, but I'm not sure that the 5 and then 4 Mutalisks are going to be enough to knock him over completely. If the Viking stays on the map, it should give him the heads up because it's still in between, or at least it was in between a little bit there. He's landing Vikings to go creep tumors. This game's just very funky right now. That's all I'm going to say.
It really is. I really hope that Erik ignores that Banshee almost, because if he goes across the map, he's going to find no opposition in terms of turrets from Kelazhur. But if the Banshee is creating enough of a distraction, which it's not, it's actually going back, then he might lose that surprise element. So let's see what happens here. The Mutas are now out and they are headed north. So we'll be going into that natural base first, most likely. Erik is well aware of where the army of Kelazhur is, and he's gonna send a link to spot it, to spot its exact position, right? He also is holding the watchtower, so he can really get set up for a defense here, as the Mutas are going for the back line and are actually gonna catch one of those tanks that was spotted by the Zergling just a little bit ago. And now, Erik, you have an opening to go into the main. Instead, he's gonna go for the safe option and kill an SCV. Okay, doesn't go for the 3rd, which I prefer, and now goes into a much more vulnerable area. Can he get the SCV making the turret? That would be crucial, as the rest of the army of Kelazhur goes into his base. No, he cannot.
Yeah, good finish up on that missile turret, bunching up all the SCVs on it to make sure he could immediately get it back to full health once it was completed. So a nice grab there. Oh, one of the Mutalisks just gets a little bit too close to the sun over there. But yeah, this is not like that scary number of mutas that you're worried about ripping your army to pieces or forcing you to run everything back home. The fact that he's still building mutas, you kind of need to at some level. If you defend everything with the Lings and the Banes on the ground, you have to get right back across there on the
tanks unsieged.
Oh, hey, he's just gonna pull back. Okay.
Yeah, I think that Erik could have pounced on this army. He has more than enough. So he was setting a full surround, but I mean, it didn't come to fruition because Kelazhur just pulls back very smartly, and he's gonna continue to siege from this position. I like Erik's position still, right? Like Kelazhur not able to even land his 3rd yet.
Yeah, and that was because of that creep again from the beginning of the game, right? There was a plan that Erik had in place, and it may not have. I don't know. I don't really feel like you hope to kill the Terran with that kind of move that he did early on. So to me, delaying that 3rd, and now it compounds because this army's trying to move across the map, and he killed the turret before it could finish there. And now the 3rd command center it looks like it's going to die, Cats. Like huge blunder by Kelazhur.
Yeah, I mean, this is Erik setting himself a win condition now. If he defends this attack, especially if he can crash it, then it will be lights out for Kelazhur, who does not have a 3rd available. So he is trailing already 15 supply, but more importantly on the economic front, he is really going to struggle after this. So it's all on Erik to be patient here, set up the flank just like he did before, maybe pick off those tanks with a Muta. He can certainly get one, and he does. Oh, and also the Banshee is a collateral.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
gas
this is
the Viking over there too. This just seems like it's indecisiveness a little bit. Kelazhur now being forced to try to fight against this army. It is off creep, so a little bit easier to split against the Banes, but there's so much here for Erik. It doesn't seem like it's going to be too much of a problem. And man, without that third command center, this has gone from bad to worse. Erik, at the very least, has kept his economy alive. Yeah, there you go. GG. We've got a tied series here, cats. Erik really throwing Kelazhur off his game with that early proxy hatch, just delaying the base. And I think my favorite thing with that, as you pointed out, he couldn't land the third because of those early creep tumors. He couldn't build a turret, and that's what made it so much easier for him to get the backstab with the mutas there. Really well done. We're going to go to a break, ladies and gentlemen. When we return, game number 3 between Kelazhur and Erik. Boom, boom, gamers. Welcome back to DreamHack Masters Summer StarCraft 2 Latin America Edition. I'm Nathanius, joined by Cats, and we're currently looking at a 1-1 tie between Kelazhur and Erik. It is a best of 5, so 2 more games needed on either side to make it to the grand final, where they will attempt to escape the jigsaw trap that is being forced to play against Special.
Yes, indeed. It is going to be a difficult finals coming up for either of these players. And spawning in the bottom left-hand side of Blackburn, it is the red Terran player do Brasil, Kelazhur. Playing for Team Liquid.
And in the bottom right of Blackburn, we have the blue Zerg player from Cranky Ducklings. He is Erik.
Also do Brazil. And this map, Nate. I am a huge fan of this map, and every time I've seen a TVC since the GSL Grand Finals, I bring up the same thing. What Rogue did tomorrow on this map looked amazing from the Zerg perspective. He went for that Roach 1-1 timing, which is, you know, as boring as it gets and has been around since the beginning of time. But the cool thing about this map is that there is those very large rocks leading to the triangle third. If we can get our eyes on that now, nah, that's not it. North of that, oh, close. No, north, left, right, to your right, to your right. No, to your right. No, those not those. It's the no, definitely not. Now, there you go.
Which rocks are you talking about, Cat?
Yeah, those rocks right there. If you break those rocks, all of a sudden the map opens up a lot by that triangle third. So it's okay now. We can go see some other rocks or something. So yeah, I would love to see that employed. Rogue went up against something like 4 tanks already pre-positioned to try and defend the triangle third, and it still wasn't enough. Or Maru did against the Roaches of Rogue. So I would love to see that from Erik. If he's gonna pull Roaches again, this would be the map to do it.
Yeah, at the same time, hopefully Kelazhur can bring some of the awareness that Maru was not able to have in that game, and kind of consider that option means you maybe don't need to be so far up towards the opponent. I don't know, Cats, you reminding me of that series is just, I don't know, as a fan of Terrans, that was a very disappointing final to watch.
Oh yeah.
But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Those rocks make that third so open. And I think it's pretty, you know, it's one of those common things in StarCraft. If you're a Terran, you want to try to play around the choke points. You also want to expand towards your opponent. So this map kind of gives you that. Well, you know what? Actually, we've already made this reference. So you know that's kind of like the choice you have to make, right? In the trap.
A lot of links being produced, by the way. And the Baneling, we're gonna have a Baneling bust in this game, but I love the points that you're making regardless, Nate, because I completely agree with you. I think that if Maru had prepared a little bit better and if he had been anticipating more Roaches, he should have never taken that triangle third. He should have just taken the vertical third instead, and then at the triangle later, he could have taken a fourth to PF, right? Because that's the main point of entry. So I think that that's something that Kelazhur could have done. Regardless, we're probably not going to get there, as Kelazhur does finish the CC, and that's incredibly important for him because now he can lift it up and it won't be denied. So this is already looking like a little bit of a fails. He needs it at the wall, yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna need to put that. He may not realize what is happening yet. The worst thing he could do would be to lift that barracks up right as these lings run up. But Erik's waiting his moment. He wants to just bust this open and go in. And the fact that he doesn't have the reactored Hellions will make this more tricky as the lings and banelings pour in. The Marines are not going to be able to run around or do a whole lot. So yeah, and he's going for the lift off. The Overlord sees it. This is a good opportunity to go in. Should be able to just bust this open. I'm not entirely sure what Kelazhur is going to do. That one Hellion on its own, not super strong. And if he brings the SCVs to fight those banelings, those 2 banes, he needs to try to target those. He gets one.
That's good enough, I think.
That might be enough of the Marines. Yeah, Marines are behind the SCVs. Actually, really sick hold there by Kelazhur so far, but it's not over just yet. Trying to get a few more of these Hellions out.
Yeah, it's looking very, very difficult for Erik to make work. And it's funny because it was so close with those banelings, and Erik spent 1, if not 2 more banelings than he needed to at that wall. Targeting the factory is obviously perfect because it splashes both of the supply depots on either side, but only 5 banelings are required to bust through. And I think Erik used 6, if not 7, on the factory.
Yeah, that was what I was wondering, because he had a few more Banes than he needed, but only 2 actually made it up into the base. And in that situation, if you're the Terran, focusing 1 of those Banes is really all you need, because there weren't really a lot of Zerglings and 4 Marines behind 20 SCVs. Well, I think if you played this game enough, you kind of recognize the Zerg doesn't have a lot of workers because they spend all their larvae on the lings. He does kill the factory though. That's an interesting thing to focus on here. Yeah. He still has a couple Hellions alive. That's a very weird way for that to play out, but he's denying the ability for him to build more Hellions and just, I guess, limit map control in this situation as like a sort of parting gift or whatnot from the end of the early rush. But usually Zerg can't do a whole lot if they commit to an attack like this. It's not like Terran where you just build two more command centers behind your wall and just keep playing.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to recover economically here if you're Erik. It does force an additional wall from Kelazhur, who is actually going back for the factory even. I'm not sure if that's necessary at this point, as he already has a starport and he's probably most likely going into bio. But maybe he wants a transition into tanks or something of the sorts later, so it's also not terrible by any means. The Banshee is going to make her way across the map this time around for the first time in the 3-game series so far. It has Cloak.
Yeah, I feel like that's got to be one of those things Kelazhur noticed, right? Because we've been talking about it, but there's no Spore. There's obviously not an Overseer here. And I'm sure that Erik probably thought to himself, oh yeah, he hasn't gotten Cloak this whole series. I don't have to think about that. And now it's the one game where every single worker is so much more valuable than usual because he gave up his early economy to do that Baneling bust. And I mean, the majority of the time, if you're going to do an attack like that and you don't straight up kill the Terran, it almost feels impossible to come back from those positions, which is why you so rarely see like a 1.5 Bane bust like that in pro level.
Yeah, it's just very difficult to pull off. I think that Erik might have had a chance if he didn't waste those extra Banelings. It is difficult to know as well that, you know, because a lot of the time if your Terran opponent has units at the wall, one or two of those Banelings might falter before hitting the wall, right? And then you need the extra Banelings to bust through. But this wasn't the case for this time around. And I mean, I love to see the Cloak from Kelazhur, because he should anticipate that a lair is extremely unlikely given the start of this game. Erik is gonna have to choose to go something like mass drones or mass units for a follow-up, and everything that Kelazhur is doing is kind of accounting for both options with that Banshee and Cloak. And now this Hellbat's just keeping tabs on his opponent, who did a nice counterattack actually.
Kelazhur, you know, I was wondering why the micro on the Hellbat seemed to be missing, and there it was, right? The Link counterattack got a decent amount of SCVs killed. However, as the Spire boots up, there is still a worker advantage for the Terran, and there are very, very few scenarios where that is ever a bad thing for the Terran player. He's got a lot of money coming in. Of course, you still have mules. I think the most important thing here is it's got to be just finish up your wall, maybe get the upgrades going, and then realize that the Spire is coming. Build your Marines, get a couple turrets, move out and kill them.
Yes, indeed. I mean, there's going to be an attempt made from Erik to get to those Muta, but it's looking extremely grim at this point. The starport has been transferred onto a building reactor, and with that, there's going to be 2 medevacs popping out at some point. And I imagine of this 3 barracks production, Kelazhur will have more than enough to close out this game. I mean, Erik doesn't even have a third yet.
Yeah, the lack of the third base here is really, really painful. That money coming in for Kelazhur is looking good. Starts his upgrades. The Banshees will go across the map. Looks like they're gonna maybe pass by that change. Nope, no, they're not. They're not gonna trigger that changeling to morph just yet. But I think at this point, since the mutas are about to come out, it's not bad if you just trade these out for a few more drones on the way out, because he's kind of done everything he needs to with these.
Like 2 ships in the night. I never quite understood that one.
It doesn't really make any sense.
Right? Like, they would make some sort of noise and, you know, likely have some sort of light.
I think Faceless said it once, and his voice is just so sultry that everybody was like, you know what? I'm not even going to question this. And then everyone repeated it for the rest of their lives because, well, I mean, if you're in StarCraft at all, you are a Tasteless fanboy. That's just the way it is.
That is true. Yeah, that's just the way it goes. This Overseer, unfortunately, not able to catch up with the Banshees, but the Banshees are kind enough to stop for those mutas to pick them off. On the other side, I like what Erik is trying to do. He's trying to use the surprise element to his advantage. Maybe get in there and do unsuspected damage. At the same time, he's not going to have enough. Though those Banelings are very close to morphing, but they are actually rallied the opposite way of what he needed. And now, yeah, it's looking like it's over. I mean, Kelazhur is at his natural base, and Erik is not going to be able to deal lethal damage on the other side. So this looks like it's the beginning of the end, to quote Tasteless yet again.
Yes. I don't believe this will be forced into a base trade situation, as the Mutalisks are going to come back to fight these Marines. Maybe you clean these up, but 27 drones to 54 SCVs is you're asking for a lot. You're asking for a whole lot here on the part of Erik. And Kelazhur, these Widow Mines at the edge of space, he's like, yeah, send the mutas over. I want to style. I want to look as badass as I possibly could. winning this game. And he should. Bye, Mutalisks. Bye. Everybody in chat, say goodbye, Mutas.
Bye, Mutas.
Bye, Mutas. GG.
Bye. See you.
Kelazhur goes up 2-1 off the back of a Baneling bust that just didn't have quite enough gas behind it. And that's one of those tricky things. I actually really like that you pointed that out, Cats, that he went for the factory with the Banelings because, first of all, he actually killed the factory eventually, which is really cool and almost never happens in this situation. But he wanted to get both depots. So if you click on the main building there, you'll get both depots next to it. But in that, I think you're right that it was an extra Baneling or two, because I think he had 8 or 9. But at the end of it, when you only need like five to blow the depot up. So 1 or 2 more Banes going into that factory than was intended might be the reason why he couldn't kill those SCVs. Because otherwise, if he has like 3 or 4 Banes going up that ramp, I actually do think that he kills Kelazhur just because he wasn't able to get reactored Hellion production going faster.
Yeah, I mean, the game would have looked a little bit different because Kelazhur would have had to run away rather than engage there, right? But like you said, if you pick off one of the 2 Banelings at that point, then all of your SCVs will survive with red health. That's good enough, right? But if there was 3 or 4 Banelings, Kelazhur cannot take that engagement. Instead, he's running away from Ling Bane, and yeah, likely loses a lot more at the very least.
Yeah, and it's always going to be a tough position to be in. I do think Blackburn in general, I mean, as a Terran, I love that map outside of the specific situation you were talking about with the triangle third. That third base tilts me pretty hard. But Lightshade for the next map, this was Erik's pick. I mean, there are only so many maps left at this point. They only got to veto 1 each, and nobody wants to play versus Terran on Beckett Industries because, well, that's pretty much just giving up a free game there. So we'll see what he's got on Lightshade. There's some open third bases on that map as well. But if it plays out like the game we just saw, not going to be a whole lot of third base action to watch, Cats.
Yes, indeed. So we'll see how this one pans out. Like you said, there is an open third potential base at the triangle. So maybe Roach has a possibility if Kelazhur takes that. But we are now loaded in, so let's introduce the players in the top left-hand side for Cranky Ducklings. It is Erik, who seems to favor the extractor trick. Oh, because he goes 15 hatch every game, it seems. It's strange, huh?
Yeah, I will, live and let live, I guess. In the bottom right, we have the red Terran player from Team Liquid. He is Kelazhur.
Yeah, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure what advantage 15 hatch gives you, but Erik does this pretty religiously here. I think most, if not all, of the CVTs that I've watched where he is not early pulling, he is doing this as of recently. I don't know if he's done the math and he's onto something while everyone else is lagging behind. It wouldn't be the first time ever, as he was one of the first proponents of lurker strategies even before the buffs.
Yeah. As a non-Zerg player, I'm not even going to touch that, Cats, because I have no idea. I imagine like the Zerg Discord or whatever there's just like a fist fight every week about this extractor trick thing because everybody seems to hate it from what I hear. Mm-hmm. Yet you see it randomly pop up all the time. Even like Korean players over the years have just brought it out and people are like, I don't know why it's doing this. Everybody agreed it's bad. And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm skeptical about this one in this matchup. I mean, if it was a CVC, I would be more okay with it because then if your opponent is going for an early pull, getting that hatchery considerably earlier will get you a little bit of a better defense because the Finnish hatchery has the extra armor against those 12 pull links, right? So then all of a sudden you can survive for a lot longer. But against Terran, I mean, like maybe like proxy 4 racks or something. I don't know. I don't know what you're accounting for.
Yeah, exactly right. There's so many variables at play. I think that was probably my favorite thing about the AI meme stuff that ended up happening because mathematically there are, it's not like having 17 or 18 workers is actually that terrible on a mineral line, right? Like 80% efficiency isn't the worst if you don't have extra mineral patches to send them to, for example. But not everybody's like, oh yeah, well, mathematically, it's always worth it to use your supply as much as you can before you max out. So building 8 extra workers per base isn't a big deal. It's like, well, a machine might think that, but in practice, that's not something that usually gets people where they want to go as quickly as they're trying to get there. These lings, by the way, incredibly annoying for the start of the game. Uncommon to see them able to get this deny without sending a lot more.
Yeah, actually gets that SCV as well on the way out. And on to heaven. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I actually the next two, the 17th and 18th workers, according to that maths on Team Liquid many years ago, mine nearly as much, even upwards of 80%. I want to say 90 something percent. And at some point I was experimenting with up to 18 workers, but past that point, past that threshold, there's certainly no argument to be made.
Yeah, I think the only way you try to spin it, and the way that I would spin the 18 workers is, you might say that those two aren't perfectly efficient, but especially if you're playing like Terran, where you're just building stuff all over the place constantly, you know,
for sure.
You're usually going under that 16. If your mineral line's at 16 and you pull an SCV up to make a depot, you are losing 100% efficiency worker for 30 seconds. So stuff like that.
Wow.
I don't know. You're getting into some crazy min-max stuff, and we know this. You know, the game's going to be decided more by mechanics anyway.
Most certainly, yes. And talking about mechanics and min-maxing and little details here, Kelazhur just picked off a creep tumor that he couldn't see just by spotting the creep tumor burrowed from the helium fire, right? So he saw that the creep tumor was taking damage. Now he's gonna get into this mineral line 4 drones. Oh, make it 8. This is already nasty.
Devastating. Okay, I wasn't ready for the first handful of Hellions to kill 11 drones. And by the way, sees that Roach Warren. Y'all are awesome observer pointing that out to us. So not only does he still have map control, because he's still building the Hellions, he's gonna get Banshees with Cloak. He's getting his 3rd command center up, but he just took all the wind out of the sails, if we're gonna go with ship references here, cats. And then one day, perhaps when we've got the Starlink internet or whatever, 2 people can literally play StarCraft on boats in the middle of the ocean, pass each other in the middle of the night while their overlords pass each other, and then at that point, Tasteless will become a God King and reign over Earth for all eternity.
Yeah, I would very much like to see that. And let's see, this Hellions are gonna continue to try and poke and just contain the creep for the time being. And if we are talking about Niall, I challenged Niall to, in less than 3 seconds from the moment I finish saying this, find my favorite rocks on this map. Go. That's it.
There it is. There's
Got
the
him.
rocks. Okay,
Got him.
Those are your favorite rocks.
That's the one.
Was this your card?
Yeah, that was my card. Yeah, thank you, Niall.
Nice.
Let's see what this Banshees can accomplish.
Keeping everybody on their toes. I'm having a lot of fun today, Paolo. This has been a fun show. It's been fun hanging out with you and watching these games. There is a spore in this mineral line. There's a queen nearby. The Banshee should be able to get a couple of drones though. If he does a little bit of fancy footwork, he can just kind of play outside the range, especially on the geyser, right? And that gas is going to be very important since he's got that lair finishing. I assume with the Roach Warren, does it have to be Nidus? What else? Is he going to just start Aspire right now?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's such a difficult position because he's already the underdog and now he's trailing so much in terms of economy. Like an even economy, an even set of workers for Terran versus Zerg, it's just not where you want to be, Nate. And yeah, to echo your sentiment, today has been a wonderful day. Hanging out with you, Ravi, and James is always great.
We've had some pretty fun games of StarCraft, I have to admit. Yeah. This has definitely not been a resident sleeper kind of day. Some very, very interesting strategies being used, even in the lopsided matchup. So the Armory is going to boot up as 1-1 finishes for Kelazhur. His 3rd has been planted. Maybe he slaps a turret on it. Maybe he doesn't. He's loading those medevacs up, though. He wants to get across the map and start dealing damage again. Do those Banshees not see the 4th hatch, or does he just not feel like wasting time attacking it? Okay, he knows, but he'd rather go for drones. Okay, I feel that.
Yeah, and make a little bit more of a threat there at the main. Pull some queens to the main because he has that left-hand side attack. Though he's just going to use it to clear some creep here, but it is a great scan. I mean, that's a lot of creep tumors, Nate. Not something that we often point to, but you'd be pretty happy with that much clear from the scan, no?
Oh yeah. No, every creep tumor killed is, even if you don't think it's an important creep tumor, I've learned that Zerg players are very protective, you know, like a mother bear. If you go near their cub, if you go near their creep tumors, that's when you truly enrage them. And like a mother bear, sometimes you can't stop the rage when you kill those creep tumors, even if they are meaningless. So it's a bit of a mental warfare aspect as well of StarCraft.
Yeah, this is another great scan and another one of those things where you are a little bit behind it translates into things like this, into clearing more creep, because your opponent all of a sudden doesn't have the army to push you right off of creep right away. They have to consolidate. In this case, it's slow roaches trying to chase those Marines around. So it's definitely a compounding effect here, as the Marines are going to be forced to lift off and get out of there.
Yeah, so he's kind of a little bit all over the place with this setup. Erik's going straight for the one thing that did work out for him pretty well. And I mean, he didn't win that game, but it still kind of worked, right? Was the Infestor play from earlier. He did land some pretty gnarly fungals. He did kill all of the bio with like 3 corrosive biles. He killed the bio with biles after he fungled them. So maybe that's the Hail Mary shot that he's going to take in this game. But I think the real fear is once Kelazhur gets like that 160, 175 supply and he's got 2-2 done, that's when we're going to see him move out. And Erik's going to need to be ready. He will have the Infestors, so he's got that going for him, I suppose.
Yeah, and I love that approach from Erik, just giving himself a chance by getting those high impact units. High risk, high reward type stuff, right? Like if they get spotted, then they're unlikely to do much, and they will be spotted actually before they have enough energy for fungal, which means now Kelazhur can be a little bit more cautious about things, spread his army preemptively, and these Infestors are very unlikely now to find the damage that they were looking for. With this nice siege tank fire set up on the high ground, things are looking grim for Erik.
Yeah, the Infestors are there, but a lot of those Ravagers got picked off in that fight. Now the Roaches are going to push up the ramp towards those siege tanks, throwing the biles. It's not going to be enough to take all of it out. Just gets one of those tanks. But I think from this position, you're still pretty happy. There's not a run by or a counter attack headed towards Kelazhur's base that we can see. So he's got map control. He has the full attention of the Zerg player on him. Well, those are the funnels we're talking about. You know, he steps forward with that bio a little bit. If he doesn't have the tanks moved up, it gets tricky. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if he just tried to cloak the Banshee and just click on the Infestors with it. There it goes. Not quite cloaked, but it'll still get the job done, as there is not a queen here to help defend that. But the bio itself does get routed.
Okay.
Picks up the siege tank at the last second, and Kelazhur is going to have to come back later and try again.
Yeah, I mean, Kelazhur does have 2 factories worth of tank productions, and he's adding additional barracks, as right now he only is producing 1 Marauder at a time. I imagine all of those new barracks are gonna be getting the tech labs for their add-ons, and then we're gonna see a lot more Marauders produced.
Oh yeah, to deal with the Roaches, that's going to be really, really important. Although, like, if you get enough Marines and tanks, you can basically kill anything. But I think spreading the army out with the Marauders, mixing them in, is also really useful in that scenario. He's getting the Hydras out. He's moving into Lurkers. The Lurkers, the most important thing about Lurkers, you can tell me, please tell me if you disagree here, but I feel like it's those hive upgrades, right? Against the bio, getting the range and the burrow speed. It really allows you to zone out when you get that 10 range, those bio from coming at your army or trying to get picks or anything like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's so very difficult to move out before that and do anything on the other side of the map, even defensively. I mean, if you're having to run around by a mobile bio player, which is what we have here, then you definitely want the ability to burrow and unburrow quickly and have as much range as possible on those Lurkers. So you're completely right, I would say. As 6 Lurkers now get started in production, as well as the +3 on the range attack for Erik. He's kind of stabilized. I mean, this is kind of impressive.
Buying time is the key move here. That could have bought him a lot more time too. Those biles, well, I guess it already did, right? So the thing that I'm looking at, well, as we get into the Lurker phase of the game, is what the setup is going to be for dealing with that. Because if he spreads the tanks out really well, you can somewhat mitigate the Vipers, but you really just need to get the frontmost tanks with the Vipers, right? And then the Terran still has to move other tanks forward. They can't really do a whole lot without getting the tanks as close as possible. Otherwise, the Lurkers and the Infestors are going to have a field day with that bio. So Erik is getting up to that army composition that he wants. These medevacs, one of them gets killed, so there's not enough to actually lift everything up here, and he's just got to stim all the way back to his third. But that big army on the top right, keep our eyes on those tanks, where they're moving, how they're spread, and if those Vipers come up, because the Ghost Academy is only just finished. We don't have a neutralizing agent for these just yet.
Yeah, here come those Vipers, as there's also a counterattack that Kelazhur is actually not really ready for. Very nice fungals as well on the side of Erik, and there's so many medevacs in the air that I wouldn't mind seeing a parasitic bomb either. But this third getting dislodged from Kelazhur, I mean, things are not looking too bad for Erik if he can keep abducting those tanks.
Now that command center very low. We're talking about things that make it hard. That's it. But this huge spread on the bio. Is that all the lurkers? He's cleaned them up. He's on the infestors. Huge amounts of drones at this base. At least the drones kind of get in the way a little bit for now. But all he's building right now to replenish this army it's just Zerglings. And +2 is about to finish. But Kelazhur's been on 3-3 for a hot minute now. And without the huge amounts of the fungals or the blinding clouds, once these tanks siege up, if he can focus fire in the center mass, the Hydras, he should be able to clean a lot of this up, because the Zerglings are not what's hurting his army.
Very nice. Bile will catch a lot of those tanks and the medevac as well. But Erik, I mean, he has lost so much now, down something like 50 supply at the end of that engagement. Didn't manage to kill the base of Kelazhur at the third triangle, and there is extra command centers even if he had been able to do that. Beautiful move from Kelazhur, capitalizing, seeing as there was a lot of the army of Erik on the other side of the map. He decides, okay, well, this is go time, and he was right. I mean, just pounces onto the lurkers with bio. Not an easy decision to make, but rather a very well-experienced call from the Brazilian. I guess they're both Brazilian.
I'm still completely fair and reasonable for you to say, Cats, as those two lurkers are going to get spotted by this drop. That's actually really nice, especially if you drop the units around them while you scan. The lurkers' line damage becomes a whole lot less useful when there's only one unit lined up with any other unit at once. Sadly, that scan does not reveal this link, but he's got a turret finishing, so that doesn't matter anyway.
Yes, indeed. All of these medevacs are bruised up from seemingly fungals. So again, a parasitic bomb or another fungal could be lethal. But look at that. The lurkers are gonna do a nice job to start this engagement, as the rest of the army of Erik maybe overcommitting a little bit. How many Vipers do we have on the field? It's just the 2.
Oh, this is really nice. Not only does he come over here and grab the SCVs that were transferred, he did load some in the command center, but that one burrowed ling is still there. So that's going to be annoying. Delaying the base, trying to do these little moves is a way that Erik can try to wedge himself back in, but he needs to keep that front line there for the lurkers. Losing the lurkers would be devastating here. There's the big blinding cloud on the tanks. He's pushing in, cleaning up the front line of this army. Cats. Erik surviving a little bit longer, and now he can retreat safely back to the lurkers as he's killed pretty much everything out front here except those medevacs.
Yeah, that looked a little bit better even at the start, as the lurkers are going to inch on forward and pick off another tank. Again, parasitic bomb I think would be huge on this clump of medevacs.
So the EMP upgrade is finishing now for the Ghost, so he'll have a little bit of a better option for trying to shut down those Vipers. Of course, the snipe will kill them in one hit, but you do need to be undamaged during the channel or it gets canceled. These tanks on the top side just kind of get mopped up without really doing a whole lot, and that northeast command center looks mighty exposed. Cats, people, you hear all sorts of things about planetaries, but this one, I don't think this is going to be one of those planetaries that fight a whole army off on its own. In fact, it's not even going to finish that transformation as it gets blown up into pieces, and Erik is going to continue to try to march towards this army, looking to get a big play on Kelazhur.
Yeah, the Viper unfortunately goes down, and he hasn't remade any Vipers just yet. He definitely has the gas for them, so I would love to see Erik starting a few more Vipers. He has 0 now on the ground, though the Ghosts are out, so that's going to pose a problem. This is a huge siege from Erik, however, and he's going to be able to pick off another planetary fortress here and gain a strong position. On the other side of things, Kelazhur is advancing with a small bio army that might just be able to get cleaned up by Erik once this swell of 36 links comes out.
I'm not entirely sure what the play here is. This is so many Hydras, and being well supported by those lurkers makes this tough. A little bit of overstim action. He killed that west side hatchery. But, you know, the big thing about Terran versus Zerg is you can't let the Zerg get onto the production. This outside base, the third, is going to get destroyed as well. Wow. Now Kelazhur is being boxed in on 2 bases with a lot of his supply depots. His tech, his Ghost Academy is there. The supply dropped depot, the floating command centers, he's blocked. He can't even build units anymore, Cats.
Yeah, if he can get the CC, that's huge. Now retreat if you're Erik. Go for that other base, the one that you haven't scouted or spotted yet. I mean, if he goes there and cleans that up, this could be amazing. But instead, it's going to be Kelazhur with a cleanup onto those lurkers, as they have no buffer at the front. And with that, Kelazhur is going to go move on the counter offense, and he really needs to find some damage. But Erik, I mean, one more of those moves, and he might be able to close this game. It's close.
Yeah, one thing that is a little bit puzzling for me is that he's only gotten the +1 carapace. So those bio units with +3 are actually doing a lot of damage. These fights are going to be a little bit weird to watch because the Zerg units should be dying faster than we'd normally expect. But with this many lurkers, it's a tough position to break, Cats, but he's got a good spread on the army.
Yeah, great snipes on the side of Kelazhur. Now Erik trying to inch on forward to pick off a tank, but he's going to lose a base in return. 19 workers, 20 or so have fallen on the other side of things, leaving Kelazhur at only 27 workers to the 64 of Erik. So Kelazhur very much looking for a little bit more damage here. And Erik has done a good job of taking new bases as well, so he can continue to spread those workers amongst those bases, and he can still make this happen, I think, Nate. Though this actually, the Spore Crawler is helping Kelazhur quite a bit. They're providing a little bit less surface area for the links of Erik to surround this bio army.
Yeah, and the spores are going to kill a lot of the medevacs, but there's so many of them, it doesn't even matter. There was already like 3 medevacs per ghost, so these lurkers have to come up. Anything that he can snipe on the way out is nice. Actually, really good transfuse at that last second. And if you're going to drop here, you better scan first because the lurkers are ready and waiting.
Yeah, and I feel like Kelazhur could have actually picked off those lurkers on the retreat as they were about to burrow. I think that he could have sniped and killed a bunch of them. Instead, he's going to lose everything here.
Yeah, Changelings actually blocked his army from trying to target fire that lurker, and that one marauder was dummy thick. All the Marines got stuck behind him, and easy mop up there. Erik is going to take another map here, put us at 2-2 in this best of 5, Cats. A little bit, there you go. If he can get to that phase of the game, that worked very well for him, and we're going to have to see what he goes for, as there's only one more game left in this best of 5, but we're going to have to take a few minutes before we get there. We'll be right back. You're watching the DreamHack Masters. Welcome back, gamers, to the DreamHack Masters Summer StarCraft 2. I'm Nathanius, joined by Katz. We have one more game to find out who will go up to be in that Saw trap that is a grand final against Special in Latin America. Katz, Kelazhur has definitely opened up a couple of opportunities here for Erik. I feel like he's had a really good macro. He's had really good harass. He killed 11 drones at the beginning of the game for not a whole lot, but overextended himself quite a few times in this series is the reason why we're here.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that we've seen a little bit of a trend, not just with Kelazhur, but even the likes of Clem. A lot of these Terran players feel like they have to hit their timings when they got their timings. But a lot of the time against Roaches, you just got to wait and sit back. And you got to do things like max out, add Marauders, make sure that you have enough tanks, stuff like that, because Marines just don't cut it that well. And I mean, I think that Kelazhur tried to end this game a little bit too fast. I think we've seen him falter in the same places in this same series even. So let's see if he can keep his composure and bring it back. However, in the bottom right-hand side of the map, it is for Cranky Ducklings, tying the series up. Erik.
And his opponent in the northwest position, spawning as the Red Terran player, representing Team Liquid, he is Kelazhur. Yeah, my biggest takeaway from that last game was just too many small, scrappy fights. I think once the lurkers are out, that becomes like the dream for Zerg. Because normally you're running all over the place, you're trying to catch these things, but the nice thing about lurkers when you set them down is they just kind of do their job, and you're not prone to accidentally moving them too much. And he had some really good positional play, like using those changelings to protect those final lurkers at the end of that last game. Whether that would have changed anything or not, I don't know. I don't care. But those little trades like that were going in Erik's favor is exactly why Kelazhur is here, because I thought he's been playing his macro game really well. He's been setting up for the early harass really well. He just needs to recognize when it's time to ease up on the gas, build up that army, get those tech units he needs like the Ghosts, and move out as one big unit and get those huge spreads and get the job done. Because yeah, that was a really rough game, and kudos to Erik because he seized every opportunity that he could get.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm Erik right now, I probably feel pretty confident in going Roaches again. I probably feel like my opponent is not respecting the Roaches and he's kind of running headfirst into them. So maybe that's the way to go into Lurkers, is off of those Roaches. And Erik has been known to open up Roaches even against just the Hellions early on, just makes like 3 or so Roaches. So that could do the second thing that I would do if I were Erik is braid my hair.
Oh, you'd braid your hair if you were Erik?
Yeah, look at his hair. It's primed for braiding. Like the little braids,
No, so here's what you do. You get a little pomade, you heat it up, rub it around in your hands, and then you get the pomade all through your hair, right? It's a really heavy hair paste if you have a lot of hair.
Okay.
And then you just push everything up and blow dry it, and you've got a great Dragon Ball, dye it blonde, you know what I'm saying? Then you walk around, you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. Yeah, that would look amazing. By the way, this Reaper already picking off a drone. That's more damage than most Reapers ever find. And Kelazhur actually maybe thinking about going for the Creep Tumor as well. We'll instead find a Ling.
Oh, a drone and a Ling. Not bad at all to start off. Hellions are going to come out. And I mean, Romanticide is a tough map as well, I think, to draw for the final series of a ZVT. As a Terran, I think that this map is really awesome against Zerg, and I think that pro players I don't know if I've ever seen a Terran veto this map, maybe at least not in this matchup, but there's a lot you can do. There's a lot of positions to cover with those tanks, and Erik has some chores to take care of if he wants to protect this base, like get rid of those rocks on the outside, and if the Hellions are able to get some good control and bully, then that third base becomes a pretty close by target, right, for a move out of that Terran army.
Yeah, and I think I just figured out maybe why Erik goes for that 15 hatchery. It might just be to get the creep spread a little bit earlier, right? Like, because that's the one thing that it does do. And I've just noticed he has pretty good creep spread already connecting onto his third by the time the third is finished. So maybe getting that creep established at the natural and the queen earlier to set that creep tumor is a good thing for him to do, or I think that he values above maybe like half a drone or something.
Yeah, and this build from Kelazhur is also kind of an interesting one because he's assuming that there's going to be some level of roaches or spine crawlers used as a defense. He's got the Marauders, concussive shell, and we do have roaches being made by Erik. If these are just defensive roaches and he doesn't turn them into Ravagers, then things get really awkward, right? These types of attacks can be really hard to hold off. You don't want to lose the Hellions early because he does have the armory on the way. So once he's got that set up, it's going to become a lot more easy. And the roaches take up a lot of supply cats, so losing overlords here is not something he wants to do either.
Yeah, that's a very good point on the supply block. At the same time, I mean, I can't believe that Kelazhur is going for an attack like this one in potential, well, and definitely the final game of the series, right? But it could be for his tournament life, and it's the reason I don't like it so much is because there's so little control. You just kind of morph your Hellbats and you kind of attack move with this Terran army, which is very uncharacteristic of Kelazhur's strengths as the medevac gets picked off, and Erik is actually gonna not focus fire. Somehow the Marauder is doing more damage than it has any right to, but I think that Erik is going to end up holding, question mark, the Marauder's still alive.
Yeah, I don't know how the Marauder was allowed to live throughout all of that, and there were a couple of those Overlords are very weak too from the Viking harass, which is just insane as well. So, I mean, Erik holds off this attack, but Kelazhur still has a tiny worker lead. Oh, Erik's just he's also building a lot of links. So I think that whole last wave of larva went into Zerglings. Is this is going to be a huge counter attack, maybe a counter all-in cats to try and take the series?
Yeah, and I like it. I mean, on the side of Kelazhur, there will be a Banshee with Cloak, so this will eventually get dealt with. It's a matter of how much damage can Erik do, how much damage can these Hellions find as well. This is very much up in the air. I mean, that attack, again, from Kelazhur, very uncharacteristic, I think, for him to put all of his eggs in that particular basket, right? Because you have so little control over what happens. These Hellions are finding some damage, but the wall will be breached on the other side as the units of Erik are getting in, and it looks like Erik might be doing it, Nate. This might be possible. The links will not allow for the supply depot to go up either, so all of this will get inside.
Oh my God, Kelazhur, he's on the production. He wasn't able to set up the add-ons of the barracks, so he's not building a whole lot. Cloak is going to be denied as well. I mean, he can't really shoot up, so it doesn't matter, but that's okay anyway because he's still getting tons and tons of damage. Cats, I have to say, we always have to make sure to mention this as Erik starts to drone up. These roaches are killing insane SCVs. It is the final game. I don't know if Kelazhur wants to tap out here or not, but if he stabilizes, there is a rule about Terrans with 3 orbitals, and you don't have to have any workers for that miracle to be possible. But man, Erik has set himself up nicely for the rest of this game. He is
35 workers, a mule that has no right to be dropped right now, much less at the natural expansion, unless Kelazhur was just praying for no follow-up from the side of Erik. These Banshees are gonna have to be worth their weight in gold, but they haven't even finished cleaning up on this side of the map, much less can they think about crossing.
Yeah, this is, I don't have any words for this. Kelazhur is in this is the final map of this series, regardless of what happens. So you know that there's a reason why he's not just going to tap out. He's going to sit in here and slug this out. 3 orbitals in a dream is very real. As crazy as it sounds, we've actually seen even more insane comebacks because I just think about guys like Axiom Heart, right? With no SCVs coming back in a crazy game where he gets busted early on, and this has been wild. Let's see if the Banshees can do anything. The Spore's not done here, but he doesn't have Cloak. Remember, that did get denied earlier. So he also can't just fly around the Queen and ignore it. He's going to go for the kill on it.
Yeah, and that's going to be a nice find for Kelazhur, who's now getting up to 7 workers killed with his Banshees. One of them will falter, though. And I mean, the supply is heavily in favor of Erik here. The nice Hellbat touch there to finish off some of these Zerglings will allow Kelazhur to stabilize at the natural base as he drops additional mules. This Banshee unlikely to find more damage as Erik is now taking a 4th base, and things are looking amazing for the Brazilian Erik.
Yeah, having a good game here in this map of Romanticide. And if there's a map that you can slow things down and drag it out a little bit, it has to be this one. Those mutas, with the money he's got saved, he's got almost 1,100 gas. That's going to be, I mean, the math on that is pretty easy. Mutalisks only cost 100, so he's going to get up. Well, I say only, but it's even numbers, I guess, is what I'm trying to say with that. So he's going to be able to get out a lot of Mutalisks, is my point. He's got the upgrade for the attack coming in. Overseer speed is going to be added in this as well. So while the Marines will be annoying, I think Kelazhur's going to have a hard time leaving his base because, yeah, I don't assume that Erik is going to want to stop with the harass once these Mutalisks are done.
Yeah, and that is such a scary prospect, right? Because one of the hardest counters to Muta is to be on the other side of the map by the time they're hitting. But this time around, Kelazhur is going to be fully on the defensive, which means that the Mutas, I mean, they can always run around, and unless you're making huge mistakes as the Zerg, they're gonna live just fine, and they're gonna have potential to do damage to pick off units, maybe even just this Banshee, but maybe some SCVs, maybe a gas. I mean, every maybe will count and stack up in Erik's favor.
Yeah. Oh, Banshee's going to fly right past the Mutas. That's as nice of a heads up as you're going to get for Kelazhur, because look at that third. And that third has no right to be there, Cats, because he's got to fly that right back over to the main base. Does not have the setup to deal with this at all. That missile turret not ready yet, but the Marines are in position since that drop got moved back. So at the very least, Kelazhur's going to buy himself some time here. But as I said, the hard part about this situation is if you don't leave your base and you let the Zerg just grow, that's, I mean, Cats, as a Zerg player, I think you know better than anybody else. If you just let Zerg sit there, that's kind of the whole point. They can spread and eat the map and infest everything.
Yes, indeed. I would love for Erik to be a little bit more diligent about his upgrades. He has not started 2-2 yet. Instead, he's gone for an infestation pit. So Kelazhur is catching up in upgrades, and when he does catch up at 1-1, and if he starts 2-2 right away, then that'll be his first real advantage in this game. That's otherwise looking extremely grim. I mean, if I had to put chances on things, oh no!
Every little bit like that is so huge. He needs to rebuild the turret too, because that's something that's always going to be something he has to worry about now. The war is on the way. He's just building like 4 Marines at a time. Terran's having a hard time getting over 100 supply. Erik is just about maxed out, and this is not like, oh yeah, I'm doing a Roach max that 3 tanks can defend. No. He's got Lings, he's got Banes, he's got Mutas. And I think this is going to be an almost impossible attack to stop, right? A lot of the bio gets pulled to the natural, and then the Lings and Banes come up over onto this third. The Mutas are getting involved in the fight. The Banes are able to land a couple of nice connections, and that third is forfeit. Cats, I think Erik might just about have done it with this huge upset. Insane. GG. Erik has defeated Kelazhur as Diego goes down, and now